What is up, everybody? Welcome to the All NBA Show, part of the All City Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Matas, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler. Legs, we thought the season might be over the weekend. That is not the case. We had a very interesting Game 4. How was your weekend? How you doing?
The weekend was great. Great Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to you, by the way, and all the dads out there, man. It's it can be a thankless job at times, Adam, but I just shout out to all the dads out there, man, doing it the right way. I had a great day with my kids on the beach, getting a couple days off. Going into the weekend, I'm with you. I wasn't going to be shocked if Dallas won a game. Obviously, I thought they'd be very competitive in this series. Very shocked at the way it played out. I mean, no one possibly could have ever imagined Dallas blowing them out, particularly to that extent. So here we go. And it's like, I don't know how people feel about it. I guess we're going to talk our way through this. Do you feel like there's a shift in momentum? Do you feel like this was more about Boston just like not being mentally engaged because they had the 3-0 cushion and maybe just not having enough killer instinct in the moment, but it's an anomaly? Very curious to get your thoughts on it, and everybody else in the chat, how they feel about it. But there's no doubt. I mean, Dallas got up big early, and unlike other games in this series where they've played well early, there was no run coming by the Boston Celtics, and Dallas got to cruise for the most part without a lot of drama or any drama in the second half.
Yeah. I think there's some interesting stuff, and I'm excited to kind of present what I found interesting, see if you agree with it, and just kind of see what you noted from that game. But first, we are presented, as always, by DraftKings Sportsbook. Stay tuned because you'll hear more about DraftKings and all they have to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. On today's show, we are obviously going to look back at Game 4, preview Game 5, and then we're going to end by talking about Tim Legler's most influential teammates. I'm excited to get to this one as he looks back on his career and what makes teammates influential, especially veteran players. But first, Legs, here's how I'll set the table for you. Going into Friday's game, I was not that interested, to be honest with you. I just was not that into the series. It feels like it was over. And I didn't think there was anything Dallas could do to make me interested, even if they were to win it. But they dominated so well, did some things that are interesting, playing big, and we're going to talk about, that I am very interested now in Game 5. So to me, what stood out, first of all, I'm going to start here. This was a great example to me. The story was Luka going into this one. We all talked about the Game 3 meltdown that he had, fouling out, some of the antics. Spotlight was on him. I thought this was a great example of your star player set a tone. And he set the tone offensively early in games, coming out and firing. But I thought he just set the tone of, guys, I let you down. This game, I'm not going to do that on both ends of the cold floor. And I think that's part of what gave them the energy as a team to just keep punching throughout. So that's the first part of this. The Luka Doncic piece, I thought he had a more mature Game 4 than he had in games 1, 2, or 3.
You're right. I think that's fair. And this guy got a lot of criticism. And so when he does make some adjustments, I think you have to pat the guy on the back for certain things. I will say this. Offensively, it was no different than it's been. He comes out every game and goes and hunts. I mean, he tries to get himself going. He takes advantage of any matchup situation that he can. And he usually takes he'll take 4 or 5 shots usually in the first 6 minutes of the game. That's very typical for Luka Doncic. He did it again in Game 4. The two differences were clearly just better effort defensively, because that's been the main focus. How easily he's been beaten off the dribble. And it's just been a situation where he's put his team in terrible defensive positions because of their over rotation on his ineptitude defensively, really. So that was better. He competed harder at the point of attack. And then I thought their team collectively did it. And through the drive, in other words, I saw situations in the first 3 games where guys guarded, like initially that first push, they guarded him half decent. And then as soon as they would cross over or spin or whatever, make the next move, they would get downhill. And then I felt like the defender, and it wasn't just Luka, it was several guys. They just kind of gave up and just waved them on to somebody else. Like, hey, help, please. And they didn't fight all the way through the move. And I felt like there were guys sliding laterally, even when they maybe gave up half a step, where they were continuing to be competitive with their hands, raking and trying to get contact, and then jumping at the floor at the rim and contesting shots. I just thought the overall effort was better. The other part was his demeanor, right?
Yep.
How overtly frustrated he gets.
Yep.
I think it's a drag on his team. It's been a drag on his team since he came into the league. It's something that periodically he gets called out for. He will often criticize himself at a post-game presser, and then he'll be better for a few games. And then it reverts back. And it was pretty bad the other night in game 3. And he fouls out of the game. So that was better. But here's the thing, Adam. Both of those things were better, but they didn't face any adversity.
Great point. Fair.
So how do we know, really? Look, the defensive effort, kudos, because that's evident from the beginning of the game. He was competing harder. He was more self-conscious about it, had greater pride in that. The other part, I don't know, and again, even the defensive part, if the game's tight for the first quarter and a half, I don't know. Does Boston just come down and just repeatedly go at him on possessions that mattered? None of the possessions mattered in this game, really. So I don't know how much defensively that's like figured out on his part going into the next game. The frustration part and not complaining to the officials and all of that stuff that we were talking about, I don't know that either, because they weren't facing any adversity in this game. So I'm going to pat him on the back because he adjusted to those two things.
Right.
But I don't know if this is now a theme going forward. I don't think we're going to know that until they get into the situation tonight where it's a game, or they're behind, or he drives a couple times early, doesn't get calls. Let's see what his reaction is then. And can he maintain the adjustment that he made in game 4? Because he does deserve to be credited for that.
So first of all, I think you're 100% right. This was a 40-point game, and it was 40 points in the third quarter, 20 points in the first and at the start of the second. So this was a game where it wasn't necessarily close at any point. That being said, it's funny because we're going to get into some actual basketball stuff, some of the X's and O's here, but I just think it's so important, the tone that your leader sets, not just from an aggressiveness standpoint, but also from a morale standpoint. And I do think it was one of the weights on the team in game 3, and it clearly was not that. And he made it seemed a mental purpose of, hey, I'm going to approach this game differently. So I do think it was a big deal. The other thing that was a huge deal here, two things. One, with Porzingis, in the state that he is in, and with him not able to go in this one, you're going to play Xavier Tillman. In game 3, Dallas started to overload and play sort of a one-man zone with their centers, just saying, hey, you're going to leave guys open and we're going to overload. In this one, I thought they did a better job of executing on that game plan, of crowding, and in particular in the moments when Tillman played, and it was only 7 of them, although they got outscored by 13 points in that. It's one of those things where it's like Dallas's defense is predicated on having rim protections. Boston has eliminated that in the first handful of games, but they did not eliminate that at all in game 4. And I think that's a big reason why Boston only had 84 points. Gafford was phenomenal, and I thought Lively was able to play more the way he likes to play. And some of that has to do with Tillman being in there instead of Horford or Porzingis. What do you think of that, Bart, and specifically Dallas's ability to protect the rim in this game?
All right. Well, first, before I even get into that, the whole Porzingis situation was interesting to me. The way that they were characterizing this, like, he's available in emergency minutes, and I'm like, what does that mean? Like, you're either able to play physically or you're not. It's pretty simple to me. Like, this isn't Kirk Gibson, where you can put him in and like let him pinch hit a wide open 3-pointer. Like, it's not like you got to change ends of the floor and you got to be able to play physically, where you're beyond the thought process that maybe you could potentially re-injure yourself. Like, you've got to be either out there or you're not out there. So I don't know what that was the other night when they were referencing that. He's sitting down there in his uniform. It's just, unless like, I don't know what emergency minutes would mean in a 3-0 game and a 3-0 series. Like, what does that even mean? I don't 3-0. It's not an emergency. No matter what the situation, you're not in an emergency. You're not in an emergency tonight either. So I don't know how much he improved over the last 72 hours, and is he going to be able to go tonight or not? But and I don't know, is this gamesmanship? where like
I think so.
kind of like the Giannis thing in the Milwaukee series with Indiana, where you kept talking about Giannis coming back any day, and then it found out he wasn't close at all. Is that just to keep them preparing for him? Like, I don't know why. Anyway, I just want to touch on that. It was kind of bizarre to me that he was in uniform sitting there and they're talking about emergency minutes when you're up 3-0. I don't know what that meant exactly. But anyway, you're right. It's a different look. It matters a lot to Lively and Gafford. Particularly Lively, I felt like
I agree.
was a little bit swallowed up by Porzingis, and it was just a little bit much, that additional length in there. And Porzingis is phenomenal. He really timed stuff well in there. They were taking that away. Lively had an impactful game. And look, some of it also, Adam, could be settling into a series for a young player, and settling into the stage, I should say, for a young player, because he definitely looked a lot more comfortable. Their role players in general, very impactful. I thought Lively and Gafford played well. I thought Exum played really well for them. And again, this game got out of hand quickly. So who knows, what's different about their minutes or their impact if this is a tight game in the second half. We'll never know that, but it doesn't matter. Those guys I thought played well. Josh Green, who has made, I think, one field goal in every game. So I've been criticizing a little bit of these minutes where he's getting these with no offensive production. I felt like his defense and energy were really good in this game, and they impacted their defense in the first 18 minutes of the game when this got away. So I thought he played well. And then, an interesting one, I don't know if it'll matter at all, but you basically had a guy out there blowing dust off of himself and Tim Hardaway make 5 threes. So now I don't know that there's any carryover. They might not play him at all, but I said it, if you remember, after game 2, I thought, they need shot making. This guy's sitting there. He was your third leading scorer. How much worse can the defense be as opposed to playing Josh Green those minutes, or Kleber the minute you're playing him? Like, give Hardaway a chance. They didn't in game 3. He did last game because of the blowout. And in 12 minutes, he had 15 points, 5 for 7. Again, might be no carryover. I don't know. But if there is, it'd be interesting if he goes and makes a few threes in this game tonight. That unlocked him, that blowout. It'd be really interesting to see if that has any impact on the series. But I just thought overall, lack of Porzingis opened up the way they viewed the lane, and it seemed like they were a much more confident team. So I agree with that. And now let's see what the status is of Porzingis in this game.
To me, it was even more pronounced on the defensive end. And, I talked about earlier in the series, the Celtics did a great job of drawing the bigs out, in particular Lively. We talked about how Porzingis was really giving a hard time because he's over pressuring and then getting beat and getting in foul trouble. But the more important part was that the low man kept being Kyrie or Hardy or guys that are not capable of rotating and challenging at the rim. They'd be in the right spot, but they're not challenging. So to me, the difference was, and we saw this in game 3, Dallas was going to commit to, hey, we're going to be vulnerable to some of these swing passes because we're going to pre-rotate to stack the strong side and put our rim protectors down low and not allow them to draw us out. It obviously didn't work in game 3, and I thought the execution wasn't great. But in game 4, they made a conscious effort to play bigger. You mentioned Exum, who gives you 14 minutes. Probably would have played a lot more than that if it was needed, but they did such great work in one half, it wasn't needed. You play Hardaway, who, again, not great defensively, but he is big. Kleber's out there. So they just went to bigger lineups, overloaded, and I think they trust that more length and maybe more attention to detail on those rotations is going to be the solve. And I'll be honest with you, if Porzingis was there, I don't think it was a solve. It would be a solve. But without him, they actually kind of start to have a lack of guys that they can swing it to. And if there's one guy on the court you don't have to guard, that defense is not compromised. And that's why it's got interesting. That's why that game means something to me, is sometimes you find an adjustment that kind of makes it difficult for the other team. And I think that's one. Play long and pre and over rotate.
I agree. And look, Kyrie had some straight line dribble drives early in the game. Maybe they're not there if Porzingis is on the court. Right. that kind of changes his night and the way he viewed. They had 18 and 16 out of their center spot. That hasn't been. That's normal. That was normal late regular season and postseason production for those two guys. That's why we've been raving about them, Gafford and Lively. It's like it's two guys occupying one position. They played 32 minutes and they went for 18 and 16. There's a lot of nights that they had like that. I think collectively they averaged 23, 14, and 3 blocks. That's a standard night, which is high level production. And that has just not been there with the occasional little burst out of Gafford offensively. I think it was game 2. There just hasn't been that impact. There certainly was in game 4. It looked like for the first time, Dallas in their totality. This is what we have seen out of them quite a bit since they put this final version of their team together. We've seen almost none of it in this series. And what does it mean, Adam? Is your guess as good as mine? And I don't think any of us definitively know what game 4 means until we see the first half of game 5. I think that's going to be a little bit more of an indicator, because the one thing we still have not gotten is a game that is basically tied with 3 minutes to go and Luka Doncic is in the game. That's what I thought going into the series was going to give Dallas a great chance, because I thought the games would be played that way. Game 1, Boston, big lead. Dallas, the closest they get is 8, so they were never in that situation to pressure Boston. Game 2, they make the late run, but it was just literally just kind of trying to run them down at the finish line. They came up short. That wasn't the scenario I'm describing. Game 3, we got that situation after the Mavs comeback, but then Luka's not on the floor to see that through the last 4.5 minutes. And then, of course, you get a 40-point game in game 4. So we still haven't seen that back and forth in one possession when everything's on the line. And I'm really curious to see if we finally get that in a game 5. But again, we'll know a lot more by halftime what game 4 meant overall in the big picture.
So to distill it down to why I think this is interesting, look, a team, it's 3-1. There was 3-0. No team's ever come back. So I don't want to oversell this position, Dallas finds himself in. But you want to talk about possibilities when we're breaking down a game, and this is the possibility. I think Derek Lively is the bellwether for Dallas in the series and really has been all playoffs. If you look at it in round 1, game number 1, he's a minus 19. When he's on the court, the Mavs are outscored by 19. He's a positive the rest of the way. You go to game 1 of the Oklahoma City series, he's a minus 13, positive the rest of the way. In this series, minus 15 and minus 50, obviously he couldn't play much, only 18 and 19 minutes. He was in a bad spot. He was in a pickle early on. The last 2 games, he's been a positive, plus 6 in game 3, plus 20 here. The reason I bring that up is that is the Porzingis piece, and that is Dallas. Why you buy him is Luka and Kyrie in the clutch. And Derek Lively has been the third wheel of that he's this great lob threat. He can protect the rim. He gives you 48 minutes of center play between him and Gafford. And when you took that away, they look so feeble in games 1 and 2. In the last 2, they have not looked like that. And the real question is, has Derek Lively settled in? But also, has Dallas figured out how to mitigate what it is they were trying to do? And some of this is obviously the injury. I think the answer to that is actually yes. I think that now Derek Lively has a role and Dallas can cover for him in a way that is going to make him a useful player. And now the onus is on Boston to counter that part or counter something else or overcome it. At least you can say Lively is a key piece. He was horrible in 2 games. He's been good and playable in the last 2. That's momentum in the right direction.
What's really bizarre, Adam, to me is if I looked at this box score and I told you before the game, I said, listen, here's PJ Washington and Derek Jones are going to combine for 4 made field goals. Kyrie and Luka are going to go 1 for 14 from the 3 combined.
Right. Yep.
Okay. You're going to get 1 for 2 out of Gafford from the field. That sounds like you're describing a Boston blowout, right? That's how weird this was. So look, I know this. Sometimes like all you really need is to just gain some confidence from anywhere that you're in it, that you can beat this team. And they got it. And now we're all dying to see, man, what's the carryover going to be? Can Lively be this impactful again? Can they guard Boston? Because that's been, to me, the biggest issue. 2 really, but I'd say that the guarding them was number 1, keeping the ball in front, keeping them out of the lane. That's been a problem the entire time. That wasn't nearly as big a problem in game 5 or game 4. And I thought there was some sound caught by Joe Mazzulla that was interesting during the game when they came out of commercial, where he's told his team, we're getting 1 advantage in shooting the ball. We're much better when we get multiple advantages on the same possession, which is so true. That's when they're absolutely unguardable. First penetration, you beat a guy. Rather than that be a shot or a kick out, an immediate shot, that next guy then swings it, and then that guy gets in the lane, and then there's another kick out, and that's a wide open shot, or they finish at the rim. That's when they're literally unstoppable because they have so many guys capable of knocking down those 3-point shots after the second pass. So let's see. what's the adjustment for Boston offensively in terms of getting back to their style when they're at their best? And can Dallas guard that? Because that's not what this was the other night. That wasn't Boston at their best offensively, certainly, with their intent on offense. And now expect them to try to replicate that the best they can. They've seen the film. They've talked about this. They know that wasn't them. So let's see, can Dallas still guard them once Boston finds that flow again? And that's to me is what this game comes down to.
Absolutely. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, we'll turn our attention away from Game 4 and to tonight's Game 5. We haven't talked much about Boston, and I think there's one thing in particular from Boston and one player in particular that's going to be a key. And we'll talk about the guys on Dallas, including Dante Exum and Josh Green, who we mentioned. We have to replicate that now in Game 5. All that on the other side. First, tell you about our partner, Shady Rays. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor activities. If you're a mountain person like me or a beach person like Legs, either way, they have shades designed for whatever activities you're getting into. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style, and they probably have a style in your team's favorite colors if you want to get some shades to wear to the stadium or the arena. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. If you go to shadyrays.com and use code AC35, you get 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. shadyrays.com with that code AC35. Also want to tell you about DraftKings Sportsbook. Could end tonight, the entire season, so you can hop on and make your bets. You can also bet on the draft. There's a lot of different things. They have same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more, so don't miss out on all of your finals action. DraftKings is an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And right now, if you're new to DraftKings, you got to check out this deal. New customers can bet just $5, and you get 150 in bonus bets instantly, whether you win or lose. That's right. There's no matching or anything. It's just bet $5 on anything, and you get 150 in bonus bets instantly for new customers. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use that code ALLNBA. That's code ALLNBA in order to get that deal. 150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or in West Virginia, visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.co/bball for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources.
All right, time to turn our attention now to Game 5 and look ahead and talk about what is needed. This section is, of course, brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. Use that code ALLNBA, ALLNBA, when you sign up. So, Legs, on DraftKings, the Celtics are 6.5-point favorites, which is more or less, they've been 6.5 or 7-point favorites in their home games. So, Vegas seems undeterred by Game 4. It happens. They weren't pressured. They seem to think this is going to go like games 1 and 2. So first of all, just what's your hunch for this game based on what you see? Do you feel the same way that Boston has a strong upper hand?
I do think they've got a pretty significant upper hand, but it's interesting what you said. Like, not that, we care much about the line, but it is indicative of the tone.
Right.
And what they're saying basically is nothing we saw in Game 4 matters.
Right.
That's basically what that line tells you, right? So, and I disagree with that. I mean, I do. I think Dallas found some things like in terms of digging deep that they needed to find and have success doing. If they go out there and they bust their rear end on that end of the floor and Boston makes 6-7 threes in the first quarter, it's the most demoralizing thing in the world. Not only did they play harder, they got results from it. So that definitely carries through your locker room. It permeates your team. Your mindset is significantly better than it was, obviously, going into the last game. So maybe this, like I said, Adam, I have a gut feeling maybe we finally get the game I've been describing that we haven't seen, which is close throughout. Maybe one team gets up 6, maybe the other team gets up 6, but you stay within those parameters most of the night. And then here we go. Let's put it in the hands of the Stars at the end in a close game, and let's let guys make pressure shots that matter in the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game. Something in my gut is telling me we're finally going to get that tonight.
So the guy that I think is most interesting tonight in tonight's game is Jayson Tatum. And part of this is because I thought he was not good in game 4. And when we talk about Lively being able to patrol the paint, I thought they were very aggressive. You mentioned it earlier of just getting hands in passing lanes, trying to get physical and crowd them. But I thought there was a lot of great open passes that Boston missed in this one. And I thought Tatum was, guy number one missing wide open shots. One I'm thinking of, there's a 24-second violation where Tatum gets the ball, splits 2 defenders on a rotation for some reason, ends up kicking it out too late in the shot clock violation. He had Sam Hauser one pass away, wide open. Is there top of the key, Sam Hauser wide open? Is there a better outcome, that you can get to? And he misses it. And he had 2, 3, 4 of those in that game where it's like, man, there was an easy pass, not even a hard one. There was an easy pass to make, and he made it harder. So tonight, if this is the plan for Dallas, they're going to overload. They're going to crowd. There's going to be extra pass opportunities. And I'm just curious if Tatum does a better job. 15 points, 3 assists in game 4 in 27 minutes, only got 10 shots up. That's not going to cut it. He needs to be different, and I think he will be tonight.
Yeah, I think Dallas is going to – I think they feel like they want to make Jayson Tatum beat them. I do. Jayson Tatum's shooting 36% in this series. So he had the one pretty good game in game 3, decent, but even that wasn't a great shooting night. But he had an impact, a 30-point game. But for the most part, it's been kind of the same old. He's missing a lot of shots that he normally makes. He's at 36% for the series, and I think that Dallas feels like that. That's a guy that has not found a consistent rhythm. Certainly not to the extent that Jaylen Brown has. Not to the extent that Drew Holiday has. Drew Holiday's at 54%. Jaylen Brown's just under 50%. Those guys have had very consistently good, efficient series. Jayson Tatum has not. So I think if you're Jason Kidd and the Mavericks, you want to force Jayson Tatum into taking as many shots as he can. And I think he's certainly capable. We know he's a great player. He's capable of having one of those nights, and it would be the best thing that could ever happen to him is in a close game. He actually has a great night efficiently and has a 30-plus point game in a closeout game. It would just kind of smother some of the thoughts around him in the last 2 finals if he's able to do that. But I think Dallas is going to challenge him to be able to do that. Probably more so than they're comfortable letting Jaylen Brown get those opportunities, or maybe even Holiday. So I'm really curious to see what Jayson Tatum's approach is early in this game, because if he misses a few shots early at him, and it's kind of like that collective, that groan you get at home sometimes. It's like, man, here we go again.
Yeah.
Like he just can't get it going. Now I'm really looking for that. And does that affect their team and affect him? Because now it's one thing to not do it on the road and they get blown out, because for your Jayson Tatum, that was collective, right? That's all of you.
Yep.
Nobody
Agreed.
showed
Yep.
up. This is different. This is different now. Now you're back home. You are absolutely expected to end this series and close this out on your home floor. His start, I think, is important, and Boston's start, I think, is important. They've gotten behind this team a couple times in the last couple games. They need to have a better start where they're playing from a lead early, I believe, because the pressure will mount and mount and mount in that building the longer that this game stays close or they play from behind.
I think the question for Boston also is just how they handle Tillman, in this one. He only played 7 minutes. As I mentioned, they were a rough 7 minutes early on. So I wonder if they go back to him or if they try to play a different style. I mean, they don't have the luxury of having a bunch of different guys, to throw out there. Your options are probably just to play small or to go to Tillman. So I think that's another decision that they're going to have to make tonight that'll determine it. Who else do you have your eye on in this game? Who else do you think is a pivot point?
Let me talk about more than individually. Let me just talk about strategically something that has to change. I felt like Boston in the last game, more so than the other games, indiscriminately switched on Luka Doncic, onto him defensively. And they put whoever. Here you go, Sam Hauser, take him. Right. Al Horford, here you go. Tillman, whoever. He's not a whoever kind of guy. And my point is this. If you're screening for him at 25 feet, I get it. It's hard then to not switch that, because if you go over the top of the screen, let's start with that. Luka now has you basically on his back. And now he's coming down the lane. He's dragging the defender of the screener with him. And that's when the lobs take effect and the kick out threes, or he scores. If you go under the screen and you try to pick him up on the other side, if the screen is set at the 3-point line, he's stepping back into a 27-foot three. very makeable shot for him. If he's 35 feet from the basket, Adam, you don't have to switch those when he's not trying to go anywhere yet. And I thought they did that several times in the first half, where they put Hauser on him or Horford on just any old action, a little brush screen at that distance from the rim. He's not looking to score. He's not even gone into like low, like ready mode to attack. He's literally walking with the ball off a screen simply so he can pick who he wants to play against. And Boston let him do it. And he did whatever he wanted to. And he absolutely torched those switches in the first half that set the entire tone for their night as a team. I think Boston has to be a little bit better, man, about who is going to get the most time on him on this given possession, particularly depending on where these screens are set. You don't have, I know switching is something you just do. Okay, we're switching everything. I feel like the best defenses I've seen do have a layer of rules to it, though. If he's this far out, communicate that. Screener, step back. Let the guy slide through. He's not trying to score yet. He's too far out to make that a viable shot. Why do we need to switch that when he's not doing anything yet? It doesn't make any sense to me. You put yourself in a really bad spot. So let's see if Boston does anything with an adjustment there, because if they don't, I think you're going to get a lot of the same result with Luka picking on inferior defenders. And there are guys they have that'll do a better job that didn't get him a lot in the first half.
Yeah. And I think this is also downstream of the Porzingis effect, because maybe you trust yourself a little bit more switching that, even if it's not the most favorable thing. But if you have that extra length and athleticism behind you, it's a little bit easier to put a lesser defender. When you don't have that, then all bets are off. So maybe this is downstream of that as well. I think Dante Exum is interesting in this one as well. Played the most games he has in the series so far. Only 13 and a half, basically, but still, that's like his regular season rotation, more or less. But he is important because, one, he does have the length to guard in the series. Like, he's a good defender. He moves well. He's smart, and he has those long arms. And then offensively, I think part of what they need is an extra body to be able to break down the defense. Now, he made 2 threes last game. You can't count on him going 2 of 4 every game. But to me, his viability in game 5 is a big piece of this. It's the same with Josh Green. You need those guys to combine for something offensively. If you're going to play both of them, you need them to give you something. Last game, it was Dante Exum. If he does that again in game 5, I actually like Dallas's chances.
I like that a lot. I'm an X factor. Can I give you one now for the Celtics? I think a guy that I'd be looking at in a game like this is a Derrick White impact. Derrick White was really quiet the other night. The game got out of control. You didn't notice him that much, but even the game before that, he only took 10 shots. He was kind of quiet in that game. This feels like the kind of game where Dallas is going to have total state of readiness for Brown and Tatum. And it seems like there's going to be opportunities there. And Derrick White has always been a guy. I'm like, man, this guy is in the middle of every run. It feels like when something's going good for Boston, Derrick White's got his hands all over it. I'm looking for Derrick White, like, kind of game where we're talking about him a lot. His name comes up a lot on the broadcast. I didn't feel like it really did the other night, and I don't think it did a whole lot in game 3.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So he has taken 10 or more shots in all but 3 games. The 3 games he has not, 2 of them are big losses. Only one of them is a win. So I think I always agree with you on Derrick White. He's such an important piece because he's the best sort of getting downhill, and he starts so much of the action for them. The other last piece I have for you, and then if you have anything else, I'm curious to hear it, but we made the title, is this a must win for Boston? You've already said it's not a must win. That's why you build a lead early, because these games aren't must win. But I do think it's the easiest. Game 5 is the easiest one when you're up 3-1. Game 6, you go on the road. That's tougher just by naturally. And game 7 isn't anything can happen. So while I think they still have a lot of outs, obviously, in the series, I do think there is something to don't lose momentum. They have not lost momentum at any point in this playoffs. They dropped a game, immediately got it back. If you lose 2 in a row and have to go on the road, and you now reawaken the confidence of a Dallas team, that makes things infinitely harder. So tonight, not a must win, but I do think it's the easiest game remaining on their schedule.
I like that a lot. I think one of the things that it should help, there should be an edge and almost a bad mood on the part of the Boston Celtics for what happened the other night, right? To get humiliated like that when you've got a chance to win a championship and everybody's just stunned by that, the way you played, how bad you looked, probably the worst game I've seen Boston play all year. And that is something that I think is going to be able to generate a certain amount of animus, like going into the game, because that's not who you were, and you want to emphatically show what you have been all year. Last thing I want to point out, and it's been from sound, a couple of like sound clips that one in particular, Kyrie Irving. I found it very interesting that he was asked about this situation in Boston and the way that they treated him in terms of the fans in the first 2 games and how he played. And he started talking about that. And I just felt like he went on and on about it too much. And he actually used the term self-doubt. Like he said, I have to eliminate not just like the team doubt, but self-doubt. I thought that was a really interesting revelation to me. Like, man, you're basically,
it's a confession.
You're basically kind of opening the door here for people to realize and pulling that curtain back and realizing like this stuff's affecting you. Like, and even if it is, man, you gotta be better poker face about that. You don't even acknowledge, hey man, what do you expect? They're going to get on me. I knew it was going to happen. And I'm hoping I'm going to have a much better response for that in game 5. Like, that's fine to say something like that. He kind of was elaborating on it, his time in Boston and why it didn't go that great. And now he's in this situation and I just thought it was kind of interesting, man. I was like, man, where are you mentally here going into this game? And we're going to find out early, I think, from Kyrie. I think his start is more important than any other player on the court. Is Kyrie Irving having a good first quarter? If he does not, I think Dallas could be in for a long night.
I think I 100% agree. And by the way, I didn't see the quote. It is interesting whenever somebody goes on and on like that, you think, okay, that's a longer answer than needed. But you could just watch games 1 and 2 and know that it was affecting him. I mean, he was really not great in games 1 and 2. So tonight they are going to need him to be aggressive, need him to make shots, and need him to have a great game. Just as we said, this is the easiest game for Boston. It's probably the hardest game for Dallas left on the schedule. So, you know, there's something to that as well. Is there anything else in this game that you think is worth mentioning or previewing?
The last thing I want to say about it is this. If Dallas wins this game, you're going to start to see like a big wave of people start to think they're going to win this series.
Yeah.
Because of what Boston's been through in the past with these guys that are trying to break through that have been so close so many times. You know, if this shifts now to a game 6 back in Dallas will be favored in that game. There's no question in my mind. And again, a lot of this could hinge on Porzingis. If Porzingis doesn't play tonight, I mean, now, and they lose, and Boston loses now, really, people are like, man, oh, man, like, this is a big deal. Porzingis still hasn't played. Now they've won 2 in a row. They're going back home. Because if you get back to Boston for a game 7, even though historically teams have done very well mathematically in game 7s at home in the NBA, that trend in recent years has started to be, like, reversed a little bit in terms of it doesn't seem like it's this impossible thing to pull off anymore. Teams have done it. And so now, if you get to that situation with these guys that have tried to break through and they allowed us to go from 3-0 to 3-3, I can't imagine the amount of pressure those guys would feel in that game at home. So just saying, like, if Dallas can somehow stay in this game and win it late, withstand whatever, they're going to get one push, big one from Boston in each half tonight. If they can withstand that, stay within striking distance, and somehow win the game, man, oh man, is it going to be interesting psychologically going forward as this series goes back to Dallas for game 6.
I think Boston wins tonight. I think they probably win comfortably. But I will say game 4 being a blowout and going the way that it was, it drew me back in. Because I'll be honest, Legs, I was not interested in this series. Friday night rolled around and the game's on, and I'm thinking it's a chore. I got to watch this game tonight and what have you. I'm back in. You get a win tonight. Those last, game 6, game 7 are going to be classics. So, and I'm rooting for it because I think it makes for a very interesting week.
It would. I expect Boston to win too, though, Adam. I do. Yeah. I think they'll win tonight. I think they're going to be ready for this moment. And
I think ultimately too.
They've been the best team. I don't know about comfortably, but I think they'll win the game. But listen, I'm not playing. I'm just talking about it. So let's see.
That's easy for us. I got an ezy job tonight.
That's right.
All right, let's move on real quick now. A couple topics here to end. The first one, and this is a weird one, but Charles Barkley, there's been the TNT dispute. Are they going to get the rights next year or not? It sounded like not. And then there was this, well, maybe they're going to be the 4th partner that the NBA brings in to save inside the NBA, which in my opinion is the best sports show, of my lifetime. I've never seen a sports show I enjoy more than that one. And Charles Barkley is a character that's one of one in NBA history. Such a unique personality and a unique media personality. I believe, Legs, one of the reasons we started this show, we believe in how you present the game matters. It's important to present the game in a certain way. I think if Barkley, as he has said, promised no matter what happens, he's walking away, I just feel like it's a loss. And I'm curious what you think. Charles, he's been in this thing, same with you. He's been in this for my entire adult life that I don't know the NBA without him commenting on it. And so for me, it's a big deal, but I'm just kind of curious if you had a quick thought on it.
Yeah, well, first, full disclosure, Charles, I consider a friend of mine. I actually exchanged texts with Charles when the news was announced that it looked like they weren't going to get the rights. And he and I talked about that a little bit. And it was obvious that it was, bothersome to him and upsetting to him. Yeah. And I don't think they really saw this happening. Frustrating. And watching from that point on, a lot of comments made on their show, like on the air, and speculation about where everybody's going to go and what they're going to do. And Barkley kind of repeatedly said, I'm not doing this without these guys. And I'm not doing it without Ernie Johnson, who had said he's not leaving Turner. So that kind of left you with, okay, well, then what does that mean? Where's he going to go? What's he going to do? Now, he has said in the past, a couple different times, he has talked about retiring. And not specifically like this, where he's saying at the end of the year. He's just talked about, he's made vague references sometimes. And one time, if everybody thought maybe he was using it for leverage for that big deal he just got with Turner, like that last contract he signed, by talking about that, because they know they don't have what they have without him. It's you could put anybody in that seat, keep Ernie, Kenny, and Shaq. It's not going to be close to the same without Charles Barkley. Everybody knows that. So people don't know, was that a leverage play? I don't think this is. I think this is because it looks like the end of what they've done. And it's a nice round number, 25 years, for him is what he referenced the other day. I think he believes it right now, but I also think you're a long way from knowing how you're going to feel at the end of the season and what other opportunities are there based on what the new landscape of coverage looks like in the NBA, because it is going to be different. You've got new partners involved. We got to figure out, all of us have to figure out what this looks like going forward. And so he might feel a lot differently when you get to the second half of the year, but it was very disappointing. I think it's crazy because you hear that. And normally when a guy says he's going to retire, it's because he's had a 40-year career in broadcasting and everybody's kind of like, oh, wow, he's ready for the big send off. This was like a jolt to everybody's system. Yeah. Like, whoa, what are we going to do without Charles, without inside the NBA? So let's see. I mean, it's definitely something that I think he meant it when he said it. I don't think this is anything other than that. That's how he feels, because he feels like this is the end of what they've done together. But let's see how it plays out over the first half of the year and what the new landscape looks like with coverage. And then you'll have a better idea what Charles's next move is going to be.
Last segment today, I asked you over the weekend who are your most influential teammates, and this came up because you were talking about Chris Mullins last week, and it just made me think, playing alongside a guy like that and the lessons you learn had to have been, getting good vets and getting good teammates early on in your career. I just hear it from players all the time how important that is. So I wanted to ask you, who were the most influential teammates on you throughout your career, and maybe just kind of tell us why they were influential. So let's start with your list.
Well, and I'll just briefly recap Mullen. I got there in 1995, and this was a guy who went to the Final Four with St. John's in 85. I was just starting out at LaSalle, so I was a big East fan guy, living in that part of the country, and Villanova was in our city, and they ended up winning a national championship my freshman year, and St. John's had this great team, and Chris Mullin was just, this iconic player, and I was fascinated by watching him, really looked up to him. Never crossed paths with him. I might have played against him early in my career. I really don't remember that when I was before 95, but here I am in Golden State that year. And, you walk in and it's like, wow, and not only is he your teammate now, he befriends you and, he takes a liking to you, and he, cause I could shoot the basketball and he's a shooter and he liked that. So we could do some workouts together.
East Coast guys too. I always feel like that matters, regional connection.
No question. And where he influenced me the most, honestly, was just like I had almost a inhuman work ethic. That's kind of what got me to where I was in the sport. I prided myself in that. I didn't see anybody working harder. I would have said, I bet you I've shot more jump shots over the last 10 years prior to the day I met Chris Mullin than anybody else on the planet. I would have sworn to it because I knew how much time I was putting in. And then you meet this guy and how long he wanted to stay after practice. How much he wanted to shoot before practice. It was incomprehensible. And you're like, my goodness, man, there was a whole, not only incrementally more work, like a whole nother level to this. And it brought out the best in me without question. Another one for me, I'll go to now the 2 years I spent in Dallas. Derrick Harper was a huge one. We were the youngest team in the league. We were one of the worst teams in the league. Derrick was our one vet. And remember, he had been on a team that went to a conference finals early in his career with Orlando Blackman and Roy Tarpley and like those teams in Dallas. They played the Lakers conference finals. So this was a guy that had established himself. He's one of the best defensive point guards in the NBA. And I didn't know much about him to get there. And so here you go, all these young guys and this one vet, and we're not very good. And the season, quickly you realize we weren't going to be good. And you're just kind of watching this guy. Like, what's his demeanor going to be? Like, how's he going to carry himself now? He's in this situation where we're a bad team. He's a lone vet. Like, is he going to make waves every day? Is he not going to practice? Is it just going to mail it in and then get out of here over the summer? And it became quickly in the air that maybe Derrick Harper was going to be traded. They were going to move on from that old regime and go all young and move him on. And the fact that he showed up every day, and Adam, when I tell you, when Derrick Harper decided in practice that he was going to pick up full court, it disrupted everything that you were trying to do and run against that team. He was the best on the ball defensive guard I've ever seen. And the fact that he conducted himself the way he did with such professionalism through that, even getting a first-time head coach in there, in Quinn Buckner, butting heads with him early on, being challenged by him in some ways. And we all saw it. It was just like sort of a tense situation. And all he did was show up every day and practice hard and lead and play hard every night. And then eventually he got his wish. He needed to be traded. He did. He got traded to the Knicks. He ended up starting for that team that went to the finals against the Houston Rockets. And then Derrick Harper got that opportunity to go to a good team. But I'll never forget the professionalism he showed and told me repeatedly, one of the lessons he gave me was every day you put that uniform on, you're not playing for the Dallas Mavericks. You're playing for every team in the NBA. Never forget that and have personal pride in what you're doing every second. Everyone's watching you. Everything you do when you come out of the game, your body language, the way you're conducting yourself on the bench, the way you're locked in or not during timeouts, the way you're competing, how tough you are. He goes, every team in the league is watching it because this won't be your last stop as a player. It was like the greatest advice I ever had. And because I was just so excited to be in the league. It was early years for me. And that stuck with me, man, the rest of my career. That's how I viewed everything. And then the last one would be Juwan Howard. The 4 years I spent in Washington, Juwan was just the epitome of, again, consummate professional work ethic, like longer in the weight room than anybody else on the team, trying to win every single sprint drill in practice. Like he wanted to win every single sprint drill. Every scrimmage, he was acting as if it was Game 7 of the NBA Finals, to the point where there were a number of fights that broke out between Juwan Howard and the guys that were guarding him because how hard he was going at guys like the entire time. And it was unbelievable, like the tone he set. And then I was fortunate that his best year was 95, 96. It was also my best year. And those two things were sort of coincided with each other. Chris Webber went down early in the season with a shoulder injury, missed the rest of the year. We ran our offense through Juwan Howard in the low post. He averaged 23 points a game that year in Washington. And as a result, there were a lot of double teams thrown down that way. I led the league in 3-point shooting that same year. It wasn't like those two things weren't connected. They were very connected. I helped him. He helped me. Our games perfectly suited each other. That was his lone all-star appearance that year. I was there that weekend. I won the 3-point shootout. And one of my favorite memories I'll ever have from a teammate, all-star weekend 3-point shootout. I'm competing, and it's the last round. It's me against Dennis Scott. Dennis Scott went first, put up whatever number he put up. Or I'm sorry, I went first. And as I'm finishing my round, and it was obvious Dennis Scott was going to have a great final round to catch me. They pan over to Juwan Howard, who was dressed all in his suit because he was an all-star that year. And he's going like this to guys that are sitting there, Reggie Miller, and guys like, give me my money, like meaning I bet on this guy, man. That's my teammate. I told you, pay me, where's my money? And it was just so cool that a guy like on that level had such belief in me. And Rasheed Wallace, by the way, was a rookie for us that year. He hit the game-winning shot in the rookie sophomore challenge. So it was one of the best weekends that the Washington organization has ever had, All-Star Weekend with representation. And Juwan and I had some great games, great moments, great memories together. And I just always appreciated the fact that no matter what time you got to the arena, Juwan Howard was already there.
I imagine that's a great feeling. Your veteran teammate betting on you in the competition and then winning a money. If he would have told you that beforehand, you might have got nervous. Like, I don't want to cost this guy some money.
I said, oh, Juwan, I don't know, man. I don't want to be responsible for that.
He's giving you elbows in practice when you get back. Like he's taking it out on you the rest of the year. All right, Emma, we got a super chat to close us out. What do we got? Carlos Hernandez says, if the Mavs win tonight, do you think this could be the first team to come back from 3-0 deficit with the 2-star players they have? It's going to happen at some point, Legs. Yeah, at some point it'll happen.
Well, we think it's going to happen, but it hasn't yet. But it seems like it will one of these days. I just said earlier, if you were listening earlier in this show, I said how much more interesting everything's going to get if Dallas wins this game. Because you're now running propensity for running the table to 7 games with all the pressure on Boston at home.
Well, there you have it, man. I'm rooting for it so that we have something. We have a show tomorrow, and I'm telling you, if the Mavs win, it's going to be an absolutely incredible show to set the stage for Game 6. So I'm rooting for it. Everybody, hit that outro music for us, Emma. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. We are live again tomorrow. So I think we're at, what would it be, 1 Eastern time tomorrow? So we'll be back, hopefully recapping either the season or recapping a fantastic game. Legs, good stuff today. Any final thoughts?
That's it, man. Let's go. Let's lace up tonight. Hopefully we get a good, compelling, dramatic game. That's all I'm hoping for.
That's all we're hoping for, everybody. Hit that like button for us on the way out. Don't forget to subscribe if you have not already. We'll see you tomorrow.
All silly like the mayor.